Yeah, it'll be fun to be in conferences again.
Yes. I do. Grab the seat. We have an agenda and yeah.
How's it going? Going well. How's the life at the Nature Center?
Good. I'm loving this job so far.
But hey,
How is life as a newly engaged gentleman?
I'm also loving that.
There you go.
I have a lot of awesome stuff up coming in my life. So far.
Nice.
Mhm. Yeah, it was weird. Everything took off like all at once. You know, I got my own place, got a new job within like 2 weeks.
Yep.
And
Yeah, you know.
you know,
How you doing, Ozzy?
Yeah.
Dakota's got to sit in the middle. He's a ringleader.
You just call him pivot man.
Yeah.
did a little poking around about the Cedar Cliff.
Calvert Cliff.
Calvert
Calvert
Cliff
Cliff. CALVERT.
operation I got going there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Stephanie and I visited a couple of times. It was great it was great to bring family and friends too.
Sure.
I mean, they actually take you around and
Yeah.
show you the reactor and the whole 9 yards. I mean, and they give a full demo of how the system works. Calvert Cliff. We had an interesting, the discussion we had when Herb was on last week. Calvert Cliff is a good example of a nuclear power plant that doesn't use cooling towers. Uses water from the Chesapeake Bay.
Mhm.
The water that flows back is, a lot of people are laboring under the misconception that waters
Right.
flow together. They do not. It's a countercurrent heat exchanger. So the water that comes in is not radiated, goes around and around and around. When it comes out, it's not radiated.
it's just hot.
Pardon?
It's just hot. That's why they have.
It's warm. It's warm. The water that comes out of Calvert Cliff is pumped back into your Chesapeake Bay is about 12 degrees Fahrenheit hotter, warmer than Chesapeake Bay, which doesn't seem to affect the fishing at all because anglers down there will tell you the best place to fish is right at that effluent. That's the best place to fish. The fish congregate there because the water's warm.
Yeah. Just
they-
regular power
and
plant.
to the best of my knowledge, none of the fish that have been caught there have 3 eyes, that kind of thing.
Right.
No, it's a very interesting operation. Hell, we had a plant down here that was coal fired, that was on the bay and for whatever reason had cooling towers. But that's what they had, cooling towers.
Yeah.
And so you look at that, you look at Calvert Cliff, you look at this coal fire plant, and you say, oh, the coal fire plant is a nuclear plant. No, this is.
Yeah.
The one that doesn't have the cooling towers. Very interesting, actually. But the Calvert County, Southern Maryland, and when we were talking with Herb about this, I was trying to wrap myself around what Herb had submitted. And when Herb explained it, basically what it wasn't he didn't think nuclear power was a bad idea. Is why are we building it here to send all the power to somewhere else? And the same way with the solar arrays and all the rest of that stuff.
Right.
And I'm in violent agreement with that. That's really why I'm here today, because this is going to be part of our discussion.
Yes.
My fundamental question is, what was the context of that legislator's question? What was his name? Akers?
Yes, Kevin Akers.
What is the context of his question?
Well, that's why we sent out the transcript of their discussion.
I didn't get it. I saw it. I said, what do you think?
Yeah, well, no, there was
In what context?
a multi-page transcript. If you didn't, let me go get it.
Okay.
Hello all, we'll get going here in 2 or 3 more minutes. Thanks for calling in and joining us.
Thank you for having us.
God, I hate summer. Jesus. Excuse me, Lord, sorry.
Summer, we had a frost last night.
Pardon?
Summer, we had a frost last night.
That's right.
Well, you know, what I need is a deep freeze. I need to get rid of all these allergens.
That's why all that rain was really nice. Knocked a lot of
The rain helped that night. You should have heard me. Pardon? You should have heard me, what was it? Last Thursday or Friday. God, heaven. I mean, I had people asking, did I have the plague? Did I have cold? Was I
My neighbor.
No, it's an allergy.
Yeah.
You know, if it grows, I'm probably allergic.
One of the reasons that allergy season is getting worse is because in cities and towns, we've pretty much been planting all male trees.
The text, right?
Really?
Yeah. I've
Because
no
female
idea
trees
what
drop
that
fruit,
is.
which is messy to clean up.
I bet we could
So
write
they
something
plant
up in a
male
matter of
trees,
an
so
hour.
they don't have to do any labor afterwards, but
You get all
pollen.
Get all pollen, yeah.
yeah.
To
Interesting. I
proof.
wouldn't aware of that.
And now he.
Yes, MIA.
And I will tell you, I lived for 29 years in Maryland, just outside of DC.
Yeah.
And my allergies were just as bad down there, and we were in very rural community. I lived on 4 acres, and you know, the nearest town, not city, nearest town was about 10 or 15 miles away. Where DC was the nearest city, about 20 miles. So I was in Coward County, a little place called Owings. It's if you're not familiar with Southern Maryland, pardon?
Were you in Aberdeen?
Aberdeen, way north, where I was. I mean, we were down. Here's Annapolis.
Right,
Here's Aberdeen.
right.
And here's where I was down here.
Oh,
I was in Southern Maryland, way south of Aberdeen. Aberdeen
where you gonna-
was about a 2-hour drive.
Plato, there's some town and we go past Washington DC. I mean, not the eastern shore, but kind of over there. And St. Mary's,
Sure. Well, St. Mary's is way south of us. St. Mary's County was south.
but the city of St.
The
Mary's.
city of St. Mary's is in St. Mary's County, city. And you gotta be careful talking about a city like that. Maybe to us in the North Country, that would be considered a city. Down there, nobody considers St. Mary's a city, it's a town. But St. Mary's County that's the southernmost county of Maryland. That's part of the Delmarva Peninsula.
Right. I've been there. It's little-
And St. Mary's City is part of it. Really beautiful, really nice, but that was way south of us.
Okay.
You know, if St. Mary's City is here and Annapolis is here, we'd be about midway between those two.
So is that in your Port Tobacco?
Port Tobacco is just south of us.
Oh, okay.
Just south of us. Yeah. I'm surprised you know about Port Tobacco. Most people don't.
Port Tobacco was the biggest port before the revolution.
Yes, sir, buddy.
So let me guess, the reason is.
And it was named Port Tobacco for a reason. Stupid me, I didn't bring my cheaters. Okay.
That's right, you can look at it later. We'll
Okay.
talk about it.
Yeah,
I'll describe the context when we get into the discussion.
okay. Yeah, please do. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you know, and we had a good
And
discussion.
And I was in attendance that evening, so I can speak to it as well.
Okay, that's Nicole, right? Yep. Good.
Actually, when George Washington was dying, they sent the doctor from Port Tobacco because it was such a major port and major town.
No, it's not that way anymore. At least it wasn't when I left. I mean, unless you were sailing a very
So Kath
shallow
Bennett is
draft.
going to be late to tonight's meeting. She sent me an email just a little bit ago.
Okay.
So the vice chair is Sue.
Mhm.
Sue, would you like to call the meeting to order?
Oh, you're muted, Sue.
You're muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted and we'll call the meeting to order. And I am not present in my home, so I'm going to ask John to do the land acknowledgement, please.
Okay. I don't have that in front of me.
It's in the minutes from last time.
Yes, and I did not see fit to print it out. Do you have a copy? Can you access it?
Yeah, I didn't print them out either.
April 20th.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. As we meet today, let us first give thanks and acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is part of traditional indigenous territories, including the Haudenosaunee people of the Longhouse, also known as the Iroquois Confederacy, and the Ganyungahaga, the people of the land of Flint, also known as the Mohawk Nation. And we use this provided by Tony David from the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe Environment Division.
Thank you very much, John. John and Dakota, do you know whether we have a quorum right now?
Oh, yes, we do. We have 10.
Oh, we have, oh, okay.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
All right.
Since we have a quorum, well, just as long as we have a quorum and everybody's going to stay for a while, this would be the time to accept the order of business as presented on the agenda. If you have an item for new business or items for unfinished business, now would be the time to ask to have it added to the agenda. John?
I have one item for new business, and that would be our discussion on nuclear energy, nuclear power.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything? And if you do, make sure you're unmuted because we won't, if you're online, we won't hear you. Okay,
Sure, this is her.
yes.
This doesn't have to be tonight, but I was hoping to have some follow-up on John Ian's request with a canoe launch proposal. And I think we're looking for things to follow up on. So at some point, maybe not tonight, but at another meeting, we will see how that's going.
Okay, would that be unfinished or new business? That was a committee, that was something brought up in committee? Or was it brought up in last month's meeting, which I missed?
It was last month's meeting.
All right.
New business, if we have time, if not time, at another meeting.
So maybe it should go under unfinished business for just a quick update or something.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you, Herb. Since we have a quorum, and John sent everyone the minutes from last month, does anyone, excuse me?
Yep.
Does anybody have an update or anything they would like to add or discuss about the minutes from last month?
Before we do the minutes, we have one more question.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I can't see. Yeah, thanks.
I'm not sure how we get a quorum. Not sure how getting that we have a quorum.
Well, you can only see 3, but we actually have more via Zoom that aren't displaying on the screen.
So who all is
Oh,
here?
so how many people are attending?
We have 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, was that Lance? Because I can't see him.
Yep.
Thank you, Lance.
Let's see. Might not be worth it.
Oh, I'm over here.
Yeah, there we go.
Hi there.
All right.
Okie dokie.
Yay.
I'm not in the picture again.
Yeah, Lance, you may want to move on the other side of Rod by chance.
either then or you can take advantage of that land.
Yes, that's you.
Yeah.
You can take advantage.
Just push your table a little bit, Lance.
Yeah, I can do that too.
Who's here online? I know we have Sue, we have Brian, and we have Herb,
We
and
also
we have Nicole. I heard her voice.
Rick Marshall.
Okay.
Tiernan Smith, William Stevens, and William Stevens.
Yep, I'm here.
I count 9, but that's still.
Okay, all right. So since we still have a quorum, does anyone have any discussion about the minutes, any additions or corrections or anything like that?
Just so, not a change. But I'd just like to compliment John on his presentation. And the river councils are doing good things. And I had a question really. I don't think those councils are very well known and have some extra funding. And I made the question, I think, about if the meetings that they're having had public notices. And that doesn't need to make any change, but John, if you could take that back to your councils that you're on and just review that again, it might help to make it more public.
All right, Herb, thank you.
Also disappointed about the county legislator not appointing John for the Oswegatchie Council. We were really hoping to have an environmentalist to add to that council, not a politician.
Trust me, Herb, I am relieved.
Go on, John.
Thank you very much, Herb. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, and a second.
Kieran Smith and Herb Bullock.
Yes. All in favor, say aye or raise your hands. Make sure that John can count you. And is anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, we have passed the minutes. The next item on our agenda is the comments from the public and our speaker. And I'm going to ask John or Dakota, either one, to introduce our speaker for us, please.
Please.
All right. Our speaker tonight is Chris Nowitzki, who is the Lake George Association's waterkeeper. As I'm sure you all remember, throughout the winter, we've been following the road salt discussion that's happening in the region and the press, especially with the new formation of a road salt committee at the state level to assess what's going on in the Adirondack region. Chris has been part of this process and the association in terms of having some successful road salt reduction results around Lake George with those surrounding towns, which has been really interesting. As the waterkeeper uses science to solutions approach to protect Lake George and its watershed. And he's going to talk about road salt reduction initiatives in the Lake George watershed. And Chris, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to hopefully be as seamless as we were earlier with Dakota on sharing my screen. And hopefully it came across.
Yep.
Oh, great. Well, again, thanks. Chris Nowitzki, Lake George Waterkeeper. It is, I'm part of the International Waterkeeper Alliance organization, which we have waterkeepers in about 320 water bodies, rivers, lakes, bays around the world. Majority of them are in the United States, and we kind of like to say we're the voice of our water bodies. Since they can't speak, but they can definitely give us signs and signals on how they are doing. Name of my presentation is called "You Are the Salt of the Earth." I'll get to that in a minute and what that actually means. Unfortunately, there we go. Froze up for a second. But our salt-filled agenda, we'll talk about science. All our work always starts with science. We'll talk about what we call our model for protection. And what we've implemented are the best practices, swim certification, which is sustainable winter management, and what are successes and some takeaways that I would recommend to you. Simple ways that they sound simple, takes a lot of work, but that they can be effective in the long run. So here's the saying that title comes from: you are the salt of the earth, but remember that salt is useful when in association, but is useless in isolation. So that's what I want to remember, is a lot of mindset has been about just relying on salt, and our highway crews who have a tremendously important job and work very hard, very long hours. You know, we have to support them, but some of the things that we've learned, and it's not just me, I mean, we brought in experts to train us. So, you know, we need to rely on other tools. Salt, I think, will always be part of the toolbox, but it cannot be what I feel is the number one tool. And hopefully you'll understand that a little bit more after this talk. So, is salt really that bad? I mean, I think it can be. We know what it can do to our vehicles. Living up here in the North Country, we've seen the scars, the burns on the trees. And it's not simply the trees, you know, salt really impacts our soils. And to me, soils are so vital. My background is I'm an engineer, environmental civil engineer, and soils are so important for water quality treatment and stormwater runoff that, you know, you think about what salt was used for, you know, who knows, 80, 100 years ago, you name it. It was used as a preservative, because why? It killed bacteria. Well, what drives our soils and the biology of our soils is bacteria. When you add salt and it runs off the road, gets into our soils, it starts changing our whole soil complexity in the biology of that. So that's, you know, where a lot of the impacts, I think, from road salt are. Here you can see, you know, impacts to infrastructure, you know, the freezing and thawing of our roadways, which we all see, you know, this time of year. And we've all seen instances of this, which I call the moron approach. They just keep putting more on and more on, but it really doesn't become effective after a point. And hopefully you'll learn that as we go through. So now down to the science. Lake George, we've studied the lake, one of the largest data sets on a freshwater body in the entire world. We've seen road salt creep up about 2% a year. It's still well below toxic. EPA standards deem a water body toxic if it's at 240 milligrams per liter, parts per million. But at this trajectory, people in Lake George, many use the lake for a drinking water source. In about 20 years, people with sodium restricted diets will not be able to drink water out of Lake George because of the impacts. And what we found with all the towns around the lake in the state, you know, that's equal to about 15,000 metric tons of public road salt application at Lake George alone. And they say private application can be double that. So that is about 300 trailers of train trailers tied to each other, about 3 miles long, that is put into our watershed every year. So we actually got the Times Union a few years ago down in Albany. So here, that's a lot of salt, and that salt's just getting dumped into our lake. But it isn't just the lake. You think about it, it's the streams. Chloride levels in streams can be upwards of 150 times higher. You know, we see the instant runoff that we get during the winter rain events that you see in those spikes that you can see up here, upwards of 3,000 milligrams per liter. And again, remember the toxic level is 245 milligrams per liter, as defined by EPA. And one of the things that people don't realize, the actual highest level of chloride concentration in streams occurs in the late summer. When our streams are at the lowest levels, the contaminants are at the highest concentrations, and that's when you actually get the highest level of consistent chloride in our streams. But it's not just our streams and our surface waters, but it's our groundwaters now, because as you put water in on the roads and it bounces, runs off with the rainfall, snow melt, and seeps into our ground and our soils and into our groundwater. We partnered with the Adirondack Watershed Institute at Paul Smith's. This is a little bit older data. It's been updated, but 350 private wells. They actually partnered with residents around the park, sent test kits out, and basically it was a third. So the yellow dots show where there's no road runoff, meaning that the homes are not influenced by runoff from roads. The black dots are local roads, so where it's a county or town road. And the red dots are where state road runoff flows into nearby where their wells are. And this is the data and the results that we got. So here you can see when you compare no runoff, local road runoff, or state road runoff, you can see sodium increases 9 times on state roads, only 2 times local roads. Chlorides 150 times higher than the no runoff. And you can see what the maximum standards are. So here you can see it's exceeding the drinking water guidelines of New York State. It's also impacting people's interior plumbing and appliances, where people's dishwashers have actually been impacted and have corroded and fallen apart. So yes, it can impact our waters. And it's not just our waters, it's our ecosystem. This is some of the work that we've done with the Jefferson Project here at Lake George, our partnership with IBM and RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So there's a fine balance and ratio between zooplankton, which are really the microscopic organisms, animals, and phytoplankton, which is the microscopic algae and plants. And they're in a balance in our water columns. But the zooplankton can be very, very impacted by road salt. So as you add more salt, you get less zooplankton. The zooplankton feed on the phytoplankton. And what does that result in? That turns into algae blooms. So here you can see how road salt can actually start impacting our ecosystem. And the last slide here with the graph or science, but it can impact fisheries, which are big for all our North Country communities, where actually they've seen reduction in hatchling trout sizes with the impact of road salt. So here you can see, the fish, the macroinvertebrates really tell the tale, because they live in the waters 24/7 and can really show us what the impacts are. So salt, it does cause a problem. So what are the solutions? Well, here's one. Kids really may not like it. We can stick big tires on our vehicles and get around, and that's the way we'll do it. But no, what we thought in Lake George is we put up what we call the model for protection, which simply is a partnership, innovation, and investment, where we make partnerships. We make partnerships with our municipalities, with the highway departments, with experts, with our businesses. We bring in innovation. We think of new ideas. We don't have the answers, but there are the answers out there. We bring them in, and then we invest. We actually like to put our money where our mouth is. And how do we solve these problems? And not just really point our fingers or preach, but try to help solve these. So when we say partnership, our road salt reduction initiative really started with the Save Lake George Partnership. And the SAVE stood for, and there's a little bit of a longer story here, the Stop Aquatic Invasives Entering Lake George Partnership, where we got together with our municipalities. There's 9 of them that surround the lake. And we realized what the impact that invasive species, aquatic invasive species, could have on the ecosystem, as well as just the economy of Lake George. I mean, it is a $2 billion industry. a lot of our northern communities, same as you, rely on clean water for our recreation, for our livelihood. And we knew if that was impacted by invasive species, we would suffer. So we actually got together with our municipal partners, put together an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to address aquatic invasive species, and actually had the first mandatory inspection program east of the Mississippi put here on Lake George. So the long story was, now we're sitting at the table with our municipal partners. What's our next issue? We said, let's start looking at road salt. We all realize, that's a budget drain on our smaller municipalities. We know that its impact. Let's base it on science. So we put together this MOU where we said we would have a commitment. We would use the science, which we've been doing. We would actually partner and bring in experts to talk, train, show the equipment here. We actually said we would have annual salt summits to bring in these experts, and that we would work with the local municipalities to try to address this issue. We didn't hold them to anything. There was no financial commitment by any of the towns. We said, let's work together. And we had a basin-wide commitment. All 9 municipalities signed this MOU. And this was back in 2015 when we started our initiative. So we started bringing in innovation, the best practices agreement. So, and we'll talk about those in a minute. As I said, we host annual salt summits. We're up to, our last one was last October. That one was hybrid. We actually had some in person, but broadcast that out on the internet, where we bring in experts from around the country and the state. We also bring in sponsors, demos, so that they help offset this. And we host this conference for free. There's no charge. It's a full day event with demo sessions, and they can speak with the people with the equipment, hear about what the improvements are, hear about the new technology, and bring in the experts from around the country that are really addressing this issue. And then talk about data-based standard operation and procedures, where really we use the data to drive our decisions. And it's not really, we're using the data that's collected, but helping make the better decisions and using it in a way that is very accessible to the operators. At first they were very afraid of this and scared, but as we get into this, you'll hear how they really now started taking this as a challenge and really started comparing route to route, driver to driver, and seeing how their rates were being reduced and how they were really reducing their road salt usage. And then investment, again, we like to put our money where our mouth is. Science and technology. These are the black boxes that we put in trucks so we could track them and find out what was being added. Techniques and equipment. I mean, we're talking about highway operators, they kind of get into equipment and knowing what's going on and some new toys and tools. So really we helped and we invested, and we'll show how we did that. And in education and training, as I said, this is a very important job, a very demanding job. The hours are ones that none of us want to work, put them in difficult situations, but we need to make it easy for them. And then we committed to actually bringing training and education to help make their job go easier. So here we get into it now, and we're talking about the 6 best practices: measure, calibrate, prevent, analyze, improve, and optimize. And we'll go through all these right now. How can you reduce something if you can't measure? You say we want to reduce road salt, we're going to use less. Well, if you're not measuring what you're putting down now, how can you actually reduce it? So we put these black boxes in the trucks, and every 30 seconds as they drove their beats, they would send a ping up to the cloud, and I don't know where the cloud is, but we would get these numbers and on the computer, and we would find out what's going on. So this is actually what our consultant would see. And we were working with a company, Viasis, out of Waterloo, Ontario. So here you can see where trucks are traveling around the southern part of the watershed. And we are really seeing how much they are applying through a storm And then we could compare truck A to truck B, which were driving in the same weather conditions, but truck A was applying twice as much salt as truck B. You're both reaching bare pavement conditions, same level of service. Why was that? And then we could start talking to the drivers and finding out what their decisions really were. And we could compare routes to routes. And as I said, this started to become a competition. Calibrate. This is very important. You got to calibrate your equipment. You got to know what you're putting down. When we were talking to drivers, they would say, oh, I leave my gate open at, 3 inches and I'm putting down 200 pounds per lane mile. Well, we would actually calibrate that and measure it. They were actually putting down 500 pounds per lane mile. So, this equipment gets abused. You're dumping tons of corrosive material on it. You have to take a little bit of time and care to make sure that it's calibrated, making sure that it's working right. And, now we're actually having departments calibrate it multiple times a year, where sometimes they would do it once a year if we were lucky. So that is a very important aspect. And then you also get the departments kind of, taking pride of their work, understanding their equipment a bit more, taking care of it a bit more. Prevent, the third practice. When we say prevent, we really mean we prevent that bond between the snow and the road, where if you don't remove the snow, that will build up, pack in the ice, and then, it's a losing battle for a while. So one of the first aspects we used was the mechanical removal through improved plow technology. We really focused on what is called the live edge plow. If you look at the photo on the right, instead of having a straight metal blade across the bottom, a single blade, you actually break that up into 6 2-foot plates, which then can conform to the road better. And none of our roads in the North Country are flat, straight. So here you can see how that blade conforms into the arch of the road, where the road's arch super elevated, or where we may have drive tracks through the middle of the road, where we may have potholes and whatnot. So really, this is necessary in the North Country. And this was really where our program started taking off. We developed a partnership with a company out of Canada, Metal Plus, and their product was a live edge plow. We actually became a wholesaler down here, where we would get plows at cost and turn them over to the municipalities. And this really did work on road salt reduction, and we'll go to the data to show that. So these are some graphs from the town of Lake George. Beginning of the season, truck 13 had a live edge plow, truck 42 did not. You can see the comparison of salt application rates between the two. About halfway through the season, we switched the live edge plow from truck 13 to truck 42. Truck 13, the driver was real upset with us. He didn't like that. Before, he used 40% less salt. We switched it, and here you can see truck 13 went up by 25%. Truck 42 came down by 10%. So this is just the change in the equipment. And you can see how the drivers started to react. And once they started seeing this, they really started understanding and started buying into this. When we first brought these plows down, there was a driver, there was a superintendent in one town that told me to get the hell out of the yard and don't even bother taking that plow off the truck. He used different words. I still cursed a little bit, but his were a little more harsh. A year later, he said, he goes to me, Chris, I'll eat crow. That was the best piece of equipment I've ever used in my department. And he saw what the reductions were. We started using roadside cameras. Now, again, you can imagine drivers probably weren't too happy about that. What is Big Brother looking over us? But here you can see the photo on the left compared to the photo on the right. The photo on the right has a live edge plow. These are roads, different routes, but the same type of condition. And you can see how well that live edge plow scrapes the road compared to the standard plow on the left. So again, this is how we started using technology and the innovation to really help our drivers. And we'll talk about how this helped them in other ways. So the other is brining, which is the use really of salt water. 23% salt added to water, and you go out in ahead of a storm and you spray the roads. Hopefully you've seen that. Equate it to spraying your pan before you start cooking so your food doesn't cook. That's the same kind of approach. And why do you do that? There was a lot of resistance again. And again, remember our operators, difficult conditions. They were born or they were raised with these particular old school type of mentality. Brining wasn't part of it. It's a change in culture, and it's a big ask, but it prevents the bonding. It buys time. And when we say buys time, if they get out a day ahead of a storm, they know the storm's coming the next day, and they coat their roads, maybe instead of coming in at 3 or 4 in the morning, they've been able to buy an hour and a half, which is huge for an operator. So they can come in an hour and a half later in the morning, maybe 5:30, which is important when they're being asked to put in 12+ hour days. It's more efficient than salt. Standard applications, salt 250 pounds per lane mile, but when you make brine, and think about usually a third of that rock salt bounces off the road when you're driving along and scatter. Liquid 50 to 100 pounds per lane mile, depending on your application rates, and that gets right on the road. Very little leaves as compared to the rock salt. So again, a much more efficient. So analyze. This is a video put together of the still shots that we do on our roadside cameras every 15 minutes. So you can see again how we're using the roadside cameras. We also incorporated enhanced weather reports to help drivers understand and better forecast what's going on, bringing in temperature change, the weather, moisture content of the snow, what those pavement conditions are, the temperatures, and really helping the operators make better decisions on the type of equipment that they're going to use. Are they going to brine? Is it going to be too cold? The time that they apply that, is it going to be good conditions? Can we come in a little bit later? What are the road conditions? And here you can see, and showing really the operator's best friend is the sun. Really, when you can get the sun on the road, that's when they really can do the best removals. But and then we started moving to using dash cams. So here you can see setting just a cell phone on a dashboard, having the operator look at their routes, take a look at the routes where there are colder conditions, there's shading. They may need to use more salt in those areas, then comparing it to other areas where they get more sun. We don't need to add the salt there. We can cut back our salt. And then using these dash cams, we actually found that this helps drivers because we know in every municipality, there's those homeowners that are going to call up, complain to the supervisor or the highways department telling me, your guys have not been in front of my house. But here we've got the dash cameras that can show the evidence and show these homeowners and the local residents, yes, they are doing it. Yes, they are taking notes, and we're actually basing our decisions not just on gut feels, which is still important, but also on science and data. And then getting together for post-storm evaluations. Here we are with a couple towns in the watershed, going over, discussing what decisions they were making shortly after a storm while it's still fresh in their head, while they're able to get a good night's sleep, but then review what those results were, showing the numbers and seeing how maybe they could have made different decisions, seeing what the results were, looking at the photos, and actually making, again, as we said, data-based standard operating procedures and using that to make what we say better informed decisions. So this is improved. This is our 5th practice. So now we're going to take a look at temperature effects of road salt. This is a graph of a driver who doesn't really understand how salt works with temperatures. The Across the bottom on the right side is temperatures in degrees Celsius, or, -18 is about 4 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way across to 0 degrees Celsius, which is 32. Salt, it can be effective down to about 18 degrees Fahrenheit, around -8 degrees Celsius. But here you can see that dotted curve, that best fit curve in there. It's kind of flat, which shows that the driver's adding salt at the same rates, regardless of what the temperature is. Here's a different driver. Look at that arched curve where he uses less salt when roads are warmer, where you don't need as much because the pavement will help melt the snow, or when it's very cold, where road salt is basically not effective. So you're not going to be using that, and you need to really mechanically remove everything. So here's an opportunity of a driver understanding the impacts of road salt. So again, here are the 6 practices: measure, calibrate, prevent, analyze, improve, and optimize. When we say optimize, understanding all these practices, reviewing them, and trying to find those best numbers for those weather conditions, for the way the road conditions are. And that's what we use for what we call SWIM certification, or sustainable winter management. That's through a company, one of our consultants, WIT Advisors. They're out of Duanesburg, New York, just south of Albany. So with our advisors up in Waterloo, Ontario, VASIS, as well as WIT Advisors, they help direct and guide our road salt reduction program. So, is it really working? That's a good question. And we feel it is. In our watershed, we actually now have 3 municipalities: town of Lake George, this is Warren County, DPW, and the town of Hague, which actually have received SWIM certifications. These were taken at various salt summits that we've had. What I'd like to do is highlight the town of Hague, which is the town I live in. Very proud and very small, 600 year-round residents, but a town that really has understood and taken this road salt reduction, and actually have been written up in USA Today. So here you can see they went from believers or non-believers to believers to now they are really leaders. So we started this back in 2016, 17, 18. These are the amount of annual purchases of road salt. They weren't believing, they were still throwing it on the way they always did. But then once we gave them a live edge plow, they started seeing the results, started talking to them about brining and how they can do. And now up until the last year, you can see that they've reduced their road salt purchases and applications by more than 50%, up to 60%. But it's not just there, it's in our water quality. We monitor, as we said, many of the streams around the watershed. And this is Hague Brook, which is right along one of their streams. And here you can see that they are now getting a 4% reduction in chlorides in their streams. And you can see that these are real numbers. These are numbers. And this is actually saving our town in the budget. We're talking upwards of $45,000 in material costs. And then we're also saving labor costs as well. So this is real dollars for a North Country town. So they're leading by example. They've made a brine manufacturing plant. We were able to get some grant funding through New York State to set this up. Here you can see some applications going down. Again, they were the early adopters, and they're really now becoming kind of the leaders talking about this. They're now considering liquid only routes where they're not even going to use rock salt. They're just going to treat the roads under particular conditions with just liquid and brine, and not even use the rock salt. Again, they're using the data to verify everything. They've got the cameras on, they've got their trackers on, and they can back up this with numbers, and they're committed to progress. So how can they further improve, and how can they give and lead by example? And really, as we said, this is kind of a change in culture, a leap in faith, to get these operators, you saw the numbers early on, they weren't going to reduce their road salt. They're buying the same amount, throwing the same amount again down. But again, I always say you got to be consistent and persistent. You've got to have that message, back it up, and work with them and be with them. We provided some initial grant funding to the municipalities to help them try some of these new equipment, help them implement the brine. And now there's a little bit, there's about a 3 to 4 year return on investment. So you got to invest, get newer equipment, different equipment, but after time, you'll start seeing those savings. So this is a quote from Ted Deers, who is really a national road salt reduction expert up from New Hampshire. New Hampshire really was one of the first states to look at this. This was a quote from his last, he was our keynote at our last Salt Summit, and I believe you are truly unique in the way that you've joined together to protect a single resource that everyone loves. He doesn't know any other place on the planet where it's happening like this. We're such a diverse group of participants are rowing in the same direction, where we've able to get businesses, we've been able to get elected officials, we've been able to get truck drivers, and we've been able to get citizens all behind this, moving towards a single goal. So our next steps, continue with the brine expansion, get other towns, bring them on board. New York State DOT, the elephant in the room, we really want to get them aboard as well. We got them to do a pilot program, which you see a sign right here on 9N along the 17-mile stretch on the southern part of Lake George, low salt area. There's a Governor's Road Salt Task Force that we helped put together and meeting the private sector. We talked about early on, they're estimated to be about 50% of the problem. We focused on the municipalities first to get some traction because we had that partnership, that MOU, and now we want to move to the private sector. And part of that is that we want to create a brine co-op so that some of the landscaping companies in the wintertime turn into winter maintenance companies. Can we work with them, help them, give them a little bit of grant funding and create a brine co-op? So some takeaways, I think Dakota wanted me to, how can we get the message possibly to some of the elected officials and highway supers up in St. Lawrence County, view our film, the roadmap to road salt reduction, success stories from Lake George. Contact us for possible training. Go to our website, lakegeorgeassociation.org. We've archived all our old salt summits, some of our keynote speakers, and you can see the presentations from the experts, we brought in through the state, regionally, as well as nationally. And you can hear a bit of their stories and what they've had to share with us. So with that, and consider the model for protection. The MOU was something that we really felt worked. Sit down at a table. There was no financial commitment again to the municipalities. Just, hey, let's sit down. Let's try to work at this issue. We'll help you. We'll put some funding in. We'll help you get grants. But let's make a commitment. Let's track this and let's follow the science. So with that, I always like to work in a picture of my daughter. A lot of times it's jumping in the lake, but I think a snowman photo is probably more apropos for this talk. So anyway, there's my contact information. I'll be glad to take any questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Yep, thank
I just
you.
want to remind the EMC that the microphone in the room that we are in is a little bit, is in a challenging position. So we'll have to remind you all to speak up if you have questions, and we may have to repeat ourselves. Okay, the floor is open. Questions for Chris?
I've got several.
Oh, boy.
You mentioned the elephant in the room.
Yep.
And the technology that you presented is excellent. Has the state of New York, well, first of all, most of the very, very red dots that you had in the Adirondack Park were areas that are adjacent to New York State DOT roads, correct?
That's correct. Yes, that's what they were. Yep.
All right. Has DOT, any of the DOT snowplows have any of the equipment that you have procured for your local municipalities?
They have tried a couple different plow technologies. They were not as impressed with the live edge plow. They felt that they experienced some problem with the tension. Nothing that any of our drivers had. I say our drivers, but the drivers around here had noticed. They started using a plow that had kind of a York rake behind it, which was a dual edge plow, they call it. They found that to be more effective. So they have. The one thing we, at least down here in Lake George, we haven't seen them brining as much, at least along the lake. I've seen evidence of state brining on the Northway, Interstate 87 over here on the eastern side of the Adirondacks. So they have started looking at that technology and putting it in. But we always feel that they could be more aggressive at that.
For years, my students, I'm a retired chemistry professor, totally agree with the data that you indicated. New York State DOT just dumps it willy-nilly. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I did some digging in DOT policy, and they actually have a document that outlines what the appropriate application rates are depending upon the weather conditions. And my biggest question is, do they actually follow their own guidelines?
I would say they do to an extent, but there's always, and I can't confirm or deny this, but there's always the word that says, there may be policies in particular yards that, they don't want you coming back with any material on your truck. So, you make sure you use all that material before you come back to the yard. But I do think they do follow those. But what we're saying is that, and I've seen the charts that you're talking about, and they vary with temperature conditions and moisture contents. And, you've got to bring a bit more science into that and change and understand, as well as become a bit more proactive in using these improved technologies, which will then allow you to bring those numbers down. And I think, can there be a little bit more incentive as well?
What's the major difference between the cost of the live edge plow versus the regular plow?
Basically, and I don't, we all know costs have gone up. I'm going to base these numbers on from 2 years ago. Standard plow was around 10,000, 11,000 in that range. Live edge plow was about 40% more. So you're talking 18,000. So there wasn't a cost increase, but you start thinking about the savings. In the little town that I live in, Hague, there's a big mountain halfway up the lake on Route 9 in Tongue Mountain. Pretty steep mountain, can be difficult to drive in the winter. It's about 2 mile grade going up and 2 miles down at 8% or so. It under a standard storm, it would take a plow operator about 3 passes over and back to clear that road. Once they have it a live edge plow, they could do that in 2 passes. So you think about the times that it's starting to save, and Lord knows they drive slow because I follow them going 20 miles an hour over that mountain. So it took a while for them to do that beat. But when you can reduce that by 33%, that's time, that's labor. And then that's one less trip that you're adding salt and putting salt down. And that's when things start adding up. So as I said, we found you got your return on investment, your ORI, in about 3 to 4 years. with the increased costs that you have to put up front to get this equipment.
Any data on automobile accidents?
Great, a great question again. No, because a lot of times, the DOT or the state police don't really put that information out there. And a lot of times, somebody drives off the bank, yeah, that's an accident, but you don't hear about it. So that is difficult to try to determine. The DOT is doing, there's another pilot that they are doing up by Wilmington on Route 86. I don't know whether if DOT, they're not the best at sharing information sometimes. So, we don't know their accessibility to those accident records.
I'm done.
Thanks, Brian.
I have a question for Chris. Chris, this is John Tenbush. You said that you have 9 local governments surrounding Lake George. And you said you got local government buy-in, and then you moved on to the other parts of your story. I'm concerned / interested on the local buy-in. And let me give you a little bit of background. We're working on a project, Black Lake, in the western part of St. Lawrence County. It's an economic driver for that part of the county, nowhere near on the scale of Lake George, but still it's an economic driver. We have 6 local governments that we're trying to get involved with the project that we're doing. And we're having a hell of a time getting them to say, yeah, okay, we'll come to a meeting. How did you secure your local government buy-in?
Again, it started with invasive species. We had them all at the table. They were all, we have to do something to protect our lake from invasive species. So, we had them all at a table on another issue. And once we started this kind of committee and they were comfortable meeting with us, because I'll tell you at the beginning, we were the environmental group and, we weren't always, on each other's Christmas card list, let me say, but we always we had the same goals. We want to protect the lake, we want to help our communities. So again, we use that invasive species issue. Once we were all at the table and we realized, we always knew we liked each other. We just didn't know maybe we could trust each other or whatever. Once we realized that we could work together and reach these goals, none of us would get everything we wanted, but if we were working for the good of community, that's good. And that's how we were able to get them in on the road salt again. And I'll be glad to share our MOU with you. And again, there was no financial commitment. We just said, you're agreeing to talk with us. We'll sit down, we'll show you the science, and they trust our science because we've done that on numerous issues around the watershed. We've been able to catalyze that into bringing in some grant funding. I think there's going to be water quality improvement funding for road salt protection. Salt's going to be an issue for a while. So I think if you make that commitment, say that you'll work, we'll always be glad to be a resource, and you could lean on us and, hey, we don't have to recreate it. Lean on the work that the folks from Lake George did and, check out their Salt Summit videos. And we have operators here that would gladly make a day trip and talk about their work and be kind of trainers. So, those are ways that we'd be glad to work with you, but I'll share that, be glad to reach out, John, and share the MOU. And, we will be glad to come out there and do a visit and, try to host a meeting or a day training and that's where, and I think I overlooked that on when you're able to get the operators talking to operators, that's when the buy-in came in, because it wasn't us, the environmentalists or the engineers or whoever, the scientists. It was the operators talking to the operators. And I think I told Dakota that earlier. Once you got there, that's nirvana. You can just sit back and let that dynamic go. And then they start believing each other. So that's kind of how we did it.
All right, I'll be in touch. Thanks.
You got it.
All right,
Has-
Mr. Marshall.
Yeah. Has anybody at the town, or I think Donnie Chambers is the county highway superintendent, has anybody discussed this? Any of the local municipalities or at county level? Am I
Yes,
muted?
No, you're not.
Okay,
I have.
Nicole
asked
might
Don-
know. I don't know.
Can you hear me okay, Rick?
Yes,
Yes, I have asked Don about this, and he's open to further discussion, but he also says that at the moment, we follow the state's regulations regarding road salt application at the county level. And my thinking there for further discussion was to bring someone like Chris in for this type of presentation, and then maybe we can have a better foundation to bring discussion to stakeholders in the county.
okay, thank you. Donnie's my cousin. I can give him crap about this, so.
Excellent.
So I guess with that said, my question, Chris, would be, if I may, do you have any kind of data to show the wear and tear on the roads which you've eliminated or lessened the salt usage there? Because I know that our roads in St. Lawrence County are terrible, the quality of them, especially after the winter and the snow and the ice and the salt. So do you notice that there's less wear and tear on the roads?
Good question, Nicole. What we have found now with that live edge plow, you know, there's a little bit of tension on those. We found that overall it works better, but you know, that where there are potholes, or you know, you've got those some bad spots, you know, that could break up the pavement a little bit more where it already is broken. So if you're, you know, the key is to try to keep up on the maintenance, as we all know, and it's tough. But if you can try to keep those roads in as good a condition as you can, fix those major holes, weaker spots in the road, there's not as much wear and tear on the road. And especially, you know, if you're allowed to you know, remove that buildup from the road, and there's not that freeze thaw as much. So but there are instances where that live edge plow has put a little bit more tension, because again, those are spring loaded, you know, they're effective at removing the snow, but you know, where there's a weak spot in the road, it could cause a little bit of damage. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, but overall, I think the roads have stayed in good condition.
The live edge plows have a significantly shorter useful life.
They have the company Metal Plus that we were working with were pretty proactive at working with the highway department. So they would provide those replacement blades and the springs that would be behind that. So we haven't saw that there was a big, you know, again, we're relatively new, you know, we're what, 7 years in. But there's been some maintenance on the blades, but they've also backed up their product as well. So.
Thank you.
Herb Bullock.
It seems from your data that the state is a huge, big contributor, and especially my understanding is that in St. Lawrence County anyways, they're using 100% salt. So my question is, with the state commission that you briefly mentioned, is that something that is going to go anyplace or be helpful, or what can you tell us about that?
Time will tell on that, Herb, but they are 3 months into their meetings. By the law, they are to deliver a report by September on this, to initiate programs, pilots around the North Country. I've attended a few meetings. I was I was appointed for the committee, but my paperwork's been backed up in the appointment committee, so I actually haven't officially attended a meeting yet. But, so anyway, but they are under and it was called the Randy Preston Road Salt Reduction Act, under Randy Preston, who was the supervisor in Wilmington, who passed a few years ago, unfortunately, but was a good partner of us. That we used to have meetings down in Albany, and it was always good to have an elected official and to go into these meetings with DOT, because they listened a lot better when there was elected officials than it was just a bunch of environmentalists and scientists. So, so I would, you know, if you have meetings up there and you want to meet with DOT, you know, your region up there, you know, always important to bring in some of those elected officials, you know, to those meetings. So I am putting faith in this meeting and or them meeting that deadline. And hopefully, you know, they can always fall back and say there's not funding in the budget or this or that, but, you know, I'm going to put a little faith and keep putting pressure on them. Make sure they deliver.
Good, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we are not hearing their questions, so we just really want to thank you, Chris, for a really wonderful and informative presentation. It really is pretty inspiring.
Great.
Thank
And
you.
well, thank you for the opportunity. I think Dakota has my contact information. It was on the presentation, but it's cnovitsky@lakegeorgewaterkeeper.org again. And I'll be glad to speak with anybody offline if they ever have questions. So thank you.
Thank you. I think that was
Thank you.
excellent.
Yep,
Thank you. Have a good evening.
yes.
Sue, 5-minute break?
Yep, 5-minute break. Sounds good.
Okay, why can't we see everything on this thing screen?
Yeah, sometimes off in the upper right, there's a little.
Oh, the leave button.
Here, switch to, let's switch to active.
Well, that will bring up, that will bring up whoever's talking at the moment. But still, we don't get to see everybody, right?
Pardon?
Can you move that picture in the upper right corner?
I've never had a water park. Never. I went once up here and saw one duck, and that duck was flying about 3 miles up. So, you know, the guy I was with went ahead and bored a couple holes in the sky. Completely. I have not been one water park.
Okay.
Really.
Okay, this is Zoom, right?
Yeah, Zoom on the
We're
TV.
TV.
Go to more.
Gallery view.
Yeah,
Give us everyone.
we're looking for that. Oh, yeah, switch to gallery, yeah.
Right, but only gives us 4.
About an hour.
This guy here. What is this?
Maybe if you made the picture smaller, then you get more.
Well, if you have to go on the beltway, that's all there is to it. I mean,
Yeah, so
Beltway
how
is
do I do
beltway.
that?
Yes, it's-
Did I sign out? Put me back to Zoom.
I don't know, I'll be right back.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So I can toggle through it all.
Yeah, you have multiple pages of people.
I know, but how do I bring them all? Not that everybody has.
Oh, no, you-
Yeah, you want to get to gallery view and then down here where there are more functions, go to more.
Which took years, literally years.
Uh,
And then-
Meeting settings,
About
maybe?
10 miles farther down the road, you add what's affectionately called down there the mixing bowl. That's the Springfield.
Show
Interchange.
my video,
that's
show
where
my video in
495
gallery view, try,
jumps into I-95
that's
south.
on.
Yeah, in the mixing bowl.
Yeah,
If you,
But maybe we'll push us out and allow one
a
more.
bunch of roads,
right. All right,
2 lane, 4 lane, 6 lane, all coming
so
together.
let's close that.
If you put a pin in the middle of it and you drew
We still have
a
4.
2-mile diameter
Oh,
circle, 2 miles.
Yeah, but we get to see Nicole now. Hello, Nicole.
Uh,
Hi.
50 miles.
We're putting in the garden at some point.
So theoretically, you could travel at speed
Sorry,
for an
I'll
hour.
give a brief rundown during announcements.
Awesome.
Yes,
Sorry I haven't been up on the emails. I've been like so busy with life stuff. It's nuts.
You're not alone there, and that's okay.
Yeah, a new job, 2 vacations and an engagement will do that to you.
Oh,
That's the mixing bowl you're talking about. That's a Springfield. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if you're interested, I have a whole bunch of wildflower seeds.
And if you didn't
so
know
you-
where you had to be,
Sunday.
you'd come up on it so fast and in such heavy traffic that it was odds on probability you were gonna miss your exit.
Yeah.
That was.
Which is a 2-hour session.
I'm not open and I'm going to.
That's good news.
Yep. I already got my hands in the ground. I planted a garden at work in the rain yesterday. And then some today too. So
Frankly, I have
gardening's great.
Just finished up there as well.
It got finished in the new building. Yeah, so it's not part of the camera, that's parks. It's not finished.
I found like.
The engineers failed
Number
to
one,
put
I
in
never- Once I left DC, I said, I don't see you need to go back there. So I just took that, cut that out of the set, threw it away.
Hook it up to
And when I found
emergency
I
services.
was always looking for ways to
Fire alarms,
avoid.
they don't have internet in there. It's supposed to be a
And the
police
best way
station.
from up here to avoid, I quote, if you want to
There you
go
go.
south into Southern Virginia or in North
Oh,
Carolina.
that's.
It's actually, or South Carolina, especially
Started.
take 81 down. Take 81 and it goes.
Okay, Sue.
Yes, hi, I think I'm unmuted. Let's all come back to order.
Yep.
And the next thing on our agenda is our report by Nicole from the Board of Legislators.
Hi, everybody. I missed you last month. My apologies. But I'm here, and so now I've got some things to share for the past couple of months. Some of it's kind of old news by now, but I just wanted to maintain that line of communication with you. So I'm going to start back at the Earth Day resolution because that's one of the things that I have on here that I wanted to discuss with you. And I know that the transcript of the meeting has been shared, as well as the ability to view it on YouTube on our St. Lawrence County Board of Legislators YouTube page. But how it came about is at the operations meeting, the Earth Day resolution was brought forward, as we do annually. And Legislator Akers said that he couldn't support the warm and fuzzy resolution, and that he asked if the EMC could take a stance, instead of having a resolution about Earth Day, take a stance on nuclear energy versus renewable and solar energy. So I know that John and Jason Fotenhauer communicated that to the board, and I have since updated them at the last operations meeting, where I get to give the EMC update that I hadn't been in attendance for the meeting, but that I had seen that the committee had been very actively researching and sharing information about nuclear energy, so that you could craft a statement, or not a statement, but I guess a stance on it that the entire board could get behind. So I did let them know that you were busy working on it, and that I would provide them an update on that as soon as you had that in. They also wanted a consideration of the life expectancy of solar farms, what happens after their life as part of that. I think it's just the alternative energy options in general, and just kind of wanting to know where the EMC stands on that. So I think that that's it on that topic. I don't know if there are questions about that topic before I move on. Yes, Rick, you're muted.
Do you think they're looking for an either or statement? That's kind of what I take from what you just said.
If I had to give my full, open, honest opinion, you know, I think that the solar and wind farms that are coming into St. Lawrence County, I feel, especially for our ag industry folks, they feel that really we are being taken advantage of in St. Lawrence County, you know, and that we've got ag land that could be useful to a growing population down the road, and that we are kind of just cutting that land up and selling it off, and we're tying it up for like the next 30 years. And I think that they just really want us to consider all options. And because you're the EMC and your expertise and your passion is in this area, I think they just want kind of a formal statement that can guide their decision-making and their efforts when considering different forms of energy.
I have a question. To your knowledge, are they being approached by anyone to build a nuclear plant up here?
Not that I know of. I haven't heard of anything. Again, I think it's to maybe to provide some pushback on, you know, we're looking at, we've got hydropower here. You know, I know that's one of the statements that's oftentimes made. We've got hydropower here that we're not even able to use because we don't have the grid to support it. So we're sending it someplace else. We've got these solar farms. How much energy are they actually giving? Are they giving energy, providing energy and incentives to people in St. Lawrence County? Or again, are they becoming part of the grid and being shipped off? In the 20 to 30 years when the life expectancy is done, what happens to them? You know, the maintenance on them, is there, you know, have communities put in the plans to have them deconstructed at the end of their lifespan? I think that they would just, it seems that solar and wind are at the forefront of everybody's mind right now. And as we consider the green energy push that New York State is putting through, I think that other viable options are what they're looking for, just an equal consideration to all alternative energy sources, renewable energy sources.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But that's feel.
To answer Sue's question, there are no applications for any nuclear power plants in New York State.
Well, I was just wondering.
As per the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Right, but they talk a lot of times before they make applications. That was more
There's
my
none.
thought. Okay.
Okay,
Nicole, sorry.
No, it's okay. If there are no other questions, I'll move on to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which has been mentioned kind of informally, was the Oswegatchie River Advisory Council, the relicensing council. And so since my notes that I wanted to update you on, as you know, the committee or the council has been formed, and it was my recommendation to the chairman of the board that we have somebody in the planning office at the recommendation of the EMC. And I actually, sorry, John and Dakota, but I actually offered up their names specifically just as, and I really just said, you know, our legislators are elected officials. They come and go every 4 years. The people in the planning department hopefully will be lifetimers, you know, that stay on, you know, until their retirement. John, that's going to be leaving us soon. But apparently my opinion didn't have any weight or clout because that decision was not made in our favor. However, I will let you know that among the discussion, I think that the reason that they chose a legislator is because, and you know, John can speak specifically, and I can pull up the documentation of the 12 seats or whatever. But many of, I'm not going to say many, but there are several environmental stakeholder groups that are part of that council. Unfortunately, the EMC is not one of them, but there are other environmental groups, and then there were state and federal appointees, but it seemed that they were lacking a local government. And ideally, they really wanted to appoint, they really wanted a seat for every community that this would affect. But that, you know, that wasn't an option either because we didn't craft the makeup of the council. I tried to argue that we could have more than one person on the board, but they didn't, or on the council, but I guess the way I interpreted the language, and nobody else seemed to interpret it that way either. So that's kind of the update on that. And John, correct me if I'm wrong or if I missed anything.
No, I think I do have a question though.
Sure.
I was told that they signed the agreement to establish the council. I'm also told that they selected a member of the Board of Legislators. I haven't been officially told who. Can you, is it appropriate for you to tell us who was appointed?
I believe so, because it was made as, I'm almost positive, if I'm thinking that it was made as part of the end of the meeting after we came out of executive session. It was part of the chairman's appointments.
Yeah.
And if not, then I'm totally breaching executive, but no, I'm positive that it was, it's Jim Reagan. And so he was chosen because he does represent that, that area of the county.
Yes, okay.
Okay, so that would definitely be the person that you would want to reach out to, or that we as an EMC would want to reach out to with any, you know, again, he's our council representative. So I would think that he will be a spokesperson for us and the initiatives and efforts of the EMC. So even though we don't have a seat, we still have somebody that we should be reaching out to.
I have a question. If he changes his mind about being a county legislator, would the person that is covering his precinct or area be his replacement, or would the county government choose another person?
Well, Sue, that's a really good question, and I don't have the answer to that. That's always one of those nuances when you have a council. Oh, John has his hand up, so maybe he knows.
Okay,
If Jim was to resign from the board, therefore presumably give up his seat on the advisory council, I mean, they could continue to have Jim as their representative, whether it's on the board or not. But if he did resign from the board and resign from the advisory council, it would be up to the county to appoint a replacement. It wouldn't automatically be anybody.
okay, thank you.
And I will confirm that, but that does seem to make sense. He wasn't appointed as a county legislator. It was the chairman of the board's opportunity to appoint whoever he wanted. Okay. Okay, I made note of that though. The finance committee, we're starting to see the monthly approvals of the different properties that they're cleaning up with the spill fund. So I wanted you just to be aware of that. I think I heard the number of 13 this year, properties across the county. They're trying, like always, to spread them out. So we'll get those cleaned up with the help of the spill fund and get them back into the tax rolls. At the May full board meeting, it was brought up, and I think Jason Fotenhauer sent along some information about it, but that Priscilla COR has been approved to use in Lake George, and wanted to know if this was something that could be considered as part of the Black Lake management. So I want to throw that out there. I know that that'll be in Brian's radar for that. And then also we had a presentation from the supervisor of the town of Colton Pierpont, no, I'll find out which town it was, about we were approached to put up the money to do a biosolid plant feasibility study that would actually produce grade A. It's a drying mechanism that takes the liquid sludge and dries it, and eventually dries it to and processes it somehow that it could be used as a grade A fertilizer. So we are going to work, the county is going to work with DANK to do that feasibility study and see if there's interest in some of our smaller wastewater treatment plants. And I will keep you up to date as that goes. Right now, it's just a feasibility study. Of course, they would have to have municipalities that are willing to do it, as well as a larger municipality that would be willing to host the biosolid plant should it become something that they decide to do. Not anything necessarily that the county would be directly involved in, but I just, it is kind of an interesting, environmentally friendly, it saves on the trucking and the transportation fees to trailer the waste out. And it puts off a friendly byproduct. So I wanted to share that with you. And then the very last thing, and I'm just throwing it out there for thought, and it worked out well tonight that Governor Hochul extended the open meeting laws remotely for one more month. However, they've left it as a consideration that counties or municipalities could craft a local law that would continue to allow for remote attendance. We've begun to have conversations as a board. And the reason I'm bringing it to your attention is simply because if we crafted a local law that would allow for remote meeting attendance, that would trickle down to our advisory councils and committees as well. if we don't craft that local law, then the advisory committees, councils also cannot have remote meetings. So I just kind of wanted you to be thinking about it and, let me know what your feel is on it. Yes, I just wanted to share that. And I think that's all I have. Sorry, I was a little long-winded. I won't skip a
No.
month again.
Very interesting. Does anybody have any more questions for Nicole? Okay, thank you, Nicole. Now we will go on to the reports of the committees. And John and Dakota, would you guys please share that with us?
Sure. The executive committee did not meet, but there was some executive action taken during the month that we'd like to report to you. At last month's EMC meeting, there was it was referenced that the St. Lawrence County Trails Coordinator was looking for a letter of support. And the letter would support the continued use of trails in Greenwood Creek State Forest and one or two other state properties, public properties. And it's my understanding that these trails just sort of clip the corners. It's not like the multi-use trail is driving right through the middle of it. We did not have a quorum last month. And they had a deadline of the end of April, I think, right? So Herb talked to us, and Dakota and I worked on a draft letter of support. We spoke with Kat, and with her permission, she saw the letter, she reviewed the letter. With her permission, we put her signature on it and submitted it by the end of the month.
Great.
So that's the only executive action that happened. Conservation of Resources Committee, do we have someone want to make that committee report, or Dakota, would you like to?
I'd be glad to. We, like most of the other subcommittees, we spent a fair amount of time talking about nuclear energy. And, but one of the main projects we're working on with the Conservation of Resource Committee is a pollinator garden project in the town of Canton. And we've secured a fair amount of resources to start the project. And that'll begin on this Sunday, 10 to 12. It is at the intersection of the Farns and Boyden Road. Myself, Lucas Hans, Dustin Bowman, Kat Bennett from the EMC. Any of you are welcome to join us. We have secured some supplies from the village of Canton in terms of wood chips and cardboard from Kat Bennett. And we will be working at the site to get the soil ready for no planting this season, I don't believe, or I think there's one species planned, but we'll spend Sunday prepping that particular site for further planting in the future. And then the rest of the time was spent on discussing nuclear energy, and we can maybe we'll do that as a group after we do some other light topics from those subcommittees.
Mhm.
Therefore, so I'll move on to, unless anybody has any questions. Okay, I'll move on to environment and economy. I should mention, sorry, at the CRC was Dustin Bowman, myself, and Kat Bennett. And then for environment and Herb Bullock. For the environment and economy committee, it was Herb and Rod Todley and myself. And we discussed one of the projects we'd like to pursue is looking into the state's DEC's deer management program and making the connection from nuisance deer in the county and getting that nuisance deer, that meat processed and onto food banks. And we've kind of hit a wall with communicating with some DEC folks in Region 6 based in the Potsdam area. But I did have success with another DEC rep from Herkimer County that works with a county planning board member by the name of Dan Huntley, who's a dairy farmer in the town of Pierpont. So I reached out to this individual and he got back to me with a host of information of how, say, a venison donation project works. So glad to report that we got a ton of information from him and an idea of how to move this project forward in the county if it makes sense. So more information to come on that particular piece. And then, like the other committee, we talked about nuclear energy.
All right, for the Invasive Species Committee, Sue Rao and I were present, and again, we spent most of our time talking, we spent all of our time talking about nuclear energy. Excuse me. And since we're going to have a discussion about a draft statement, I sent out copies of the committee report so you can take a look at that. The same with the Watershed Management Committee. Brian Washburn and William Stevens attended. I was there as well. And Brian and William had a number of cogent comments to make about various aspects of nuclear energy. Again, you've got the committee report, the details on that, but we will talk at the about our EMC's comments on nuclear energy.
John? Hey, John,
Yes. Yes.
should we announce to the committee that we have received the draft lake management plan for Black Lake from the consultant?
No.
Okay.
Secret, Brian. No, that's an excellent point. It was after the committee meeting, but we did finally get a copy of the draft lake management plan from Luke Gervasi, the consultant that was hired by the town of Oswegatchie and the Black Lake Chamber of Commerce. Brian has had a chance to read it, and if I can summarize your comments, Brian, you weren't terribly impressed, but I'm still working through it. And we are going to be distributing it to folks with the Black Lake Association and then some of the other scientist researcher types who we have been talking to over the last year so that we can get some informed commentary on the plan. Luke wants to have to be able to talk to people who have commented at a future date that has not yet been determined.
Hey, John, could you send that maybe to the members of the Invasive Species Committee too, please?
Yes,
that
it's
we
a
could
little bit hard
look
because
at
it's
it?
so big.
It's
a little
big?
hard because it's so big. It's the file that I got was 28 meg.
Oh, uh-huh.
I was able to reduce it to 14 meg, and so that actually goes through a number of email programs. But
Right.
it's also a way to blow up somebody's email.
Uh-huh.
So working on an arrangement where we can post it to a website and then
Okay.
people can download it.
Yeah, because I'd really be interested to see it if that,
I've been able to go through it in more detail. I agree with what John said, what I said, but there is an absolutely excellent plant survey done. And one of the amazing things is John reported when he made a presentation earlier on what the harvester, the guy who was running the
yeah.
milfoil harvester, and what the estimated population of EMW was. It almost agrees with what the consultant said in the
Mhm.
north section of the lake. It
Right.
was nice. There's some nice data in there for that. The rest of it, nah.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you for bringing that up.
yes, thank you very much. And we'll move on to report of the staff.
The only thing that I have to report is that this Saturday is the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Event here in Canton at the Human Services Center from 9 a.m. until 1 p.m. Excuse me. And I need 5 to 6 volunteers. I've got 3. Brian makes 4. So I'm looking for 2 more volunteers. I've got Dakota and me, and then Herb says he can be there for a couple hours. Jen Berberitz, who used to be on the EMC, can be there for a couple hours. And now Brian. If I get 1 or 2 more, I'll be a happy man.
Hey, John, I have not seen a public announcement of it.
There was something in Sunday's paper, and I had been posting it all over Facebook, every place I can.
Hasn't been on North Country Now yet.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you, John. And I just want to say, I can't come, I'm in California, but it's really a fun day, and it's just really a very nice event to go to if you can. And you're going to see some of your friends you haven't seen for many years. It's really,
I
really
got
good.
one more thing.
Yeah,
Hey, John,
Yes.
we've been turning people away with latex paint.
Yes.
Mhm.
But if you go to the solid waste website and their announcement, right down on the bottom of the what is accepted is oil and latex paint.
Okay.
The state also has a new commission on returning paint to
Yes.
your local, I guess, landfill. And I didn't read it closely, but you can bring something like 11 gallons in per person or 11 containers, and you can do that anytime and you don't have to let it dry or anything.
Right.
So, yes, Rick.
Quick question. I can't be there because I have to go to Vermont to see my elderly in-laws, sorry. But usually there's cookies, so you should all go and get those.
Cookies won't be there, Rick, because I won't be there.
Oh my God.
Maybe I
Life is
shouldn't have said
bad.
that.
Anyway, I've called, the Rotary I'm in. I think I mentioned this to John probably. They were donated a dental x-ray machine some years ago, and they're trying to figure out how to get rid of it. I've called, is it Larry Legault a couple times? He's never gotten back to me. I don't think there's anything hazardous in an actual x-ray machine from what I looked at online. I don't know, does anybody know anything different? I just wonder if I could have them just take it to the drop-off point in Messina. I'd hate to have them turned away though.
Put it out on your lawn for Messina cleanup.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was a couple weeks ago.
You know what? Why don't you call Eddie's Isaac and ask him? And it might just be they have like a tube that generates the radioactivity, and the tube itself isn't radioactive until it gets, a current, and Eddie could tell you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it might have been from his father, actually.
Yeah, but ask him, he will know. He knows, he really works with his technology and stuff.
Yeah.
Lucas has a question or comment.
So SUNY Potsdam is a pretty good X-ray lab to my knowledge. And they're always looking for, I'll say, vintage parts.
Would you
So
say that again, please?
Yeah.
SUNY Potsdam has an X-ray lab. They're always looking for vintage parts.
Potsdam College?
SUNY Potsdam.
Yeah.
I will call them. Thank you.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Gonna
That's
mention
really cool. You never know what you're going to talk about at an EMC meeting. This is great.
Everybody wants a free dental x-ray. Okay.
Huh?
So,
Yeah, her.
so I was just gonna mention the recycled paint. I didn't know if you're aware, John, that Coakley's Hardware will take used partial cans of paint, and then they mix them together. I don't know if they give them to people or reuse it.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's part of that new paint initiative that has just been announced. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get more
Okay.
information, get that out. We'll get more information about that, Sue, and get that
Okay.
out.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay, now we're going to move on to unfinished business, and it was Herb's canoe kayak launch that he was asking for an update or something.
Not an update, and just if we can keep it on the back burner and not forget it. At some point,
Okay.
we could do some follow-up to see what's happening with that request. John?
Should we assign that to a committee? And if we do, either conservation of resources or watershed management might be the appropriate committee. Sue, the chair, usually makes those committee assignments. What do you think? Who should take that?
I think it could be either, and I think maybe, I don't know, conservation of resources might have a little bit more time now. I mean, if it depends on the schedule, because it depends on, I would give it, you guys know more who's busier, and and the people on there, and if you can find a person who's really interested on there, that would be the better thing. And also if they had a shorter agenda,
So you're
but
gonna leave
either would be fine.
You're
But-
gonna leave it to Dakota and me to figure it out.
Well, I mean, I would just say, you know, conservation of resources would be a good place to start. And I'm on that committee, so I'm not passing the buck. And
You wanna-
yeah, exactly. That's right. You guys have to duke it out. Yeah.
Conservation Resources it is, at least for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. All right. Now our new business is,
I do have one more item for unfinished business. I
okay,
didn't-
sure.
From the beginning of the meeting. We had the rights of nature presentation, what, 2 months ago?
Yes.
And there is a rights of nature conference at St. Lawrence University in June. And it's where they're going to talk about how to draft local laws to enshrine rights of nature in your community. Again, like Herb said, I wanted us to not forget it and to keep that on our radar. I don't know who might be interested in going. I hope to recruit somebody from the EMC to be able to attend that. But that's all I have on that.
Okay, yeah, it's June 25th and 26th, and they have a short, well, there's 15 to 20 people that can go. And I get some updates and I can forward them to you if you guys don't get them. And I think you get them, right, Dakota?
Yeah, they said they have 2 spots for EMC members.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful. I don't think I'll be back by then, or I would go. But it is very interesting. And I was actually reading the report from John's presentation last month about the relicensing and how it changed from the I think it was the Racket River one to the Grass River one, where they took the whole watershed all the way up. And it's that kind of expansion into the entire watershed that sort of goes along with the rights of nature kind of idea. And I thought, wow, that's sort of, you know, maybe that shows the direction that, you know, our committees are going. It would be really nice. So, yeah. Okay.
Would anybody like to attend that workshop?
I wouldn't mind hearing more about it. So if someone shoots me an email about it, I'd love to read up on it.
Okay.
It's a Friday night and I think a Saturday. So it's not during the middle of the work week, or else it's Saturday and Sunday, something like that. Let me look.
I'd also be interested in attending.
Thank you, Kat.
Hello, Kat, welcome.
Hey, John.
It's Saturday and Saturday later in the day and Sunday are the two
Yeah,
days.
I think that sounds doable.
Great, thank you.
All right. Any more unfinished business? Okay, let's move on to new business and the nuclear discussion that we're having. So I'm going to let Dakota and John take over with this and see where we go.
At the very end of today, right before the meeting, that just-in-time delivery stuff, I sent out a draft of an EMC opinion on nuclear energy. And as we all know, we heard the charge from the Board of Legislators. I sent out a transcript of the discussion where that they had about this, and a couple of resources. And then I solicited comments from EMC members, and we got a half a dozen very good comments. Thank you all for taking the time to work on that. So we distributed those for the EMC committee meetings. And so as has been reported tonight, at each committee meeting, there was some substantial discussion about nuclear energy and nuclear power. Dakota and I took all of that and sat down and put together a half a dozen or so statements that we hope the EMC will be able to agree on we're looking for consensus. I know that 9 votes are required to approve anything. I would very much like for this to be a consensus-driven item that we report back. So Dakota has this up on the screen. I'm just going to read off the statements that we compiled from all of the work that you guys did. First, nuclear power, nuclear energy powers the universe and is essential for life. So what I take that to mean is that we are not, unalterably opposed to anything nuclear. Right? We understand that it's a natural process. Second, that nuclear power has been used to produce electricity in the United States for over 70 years. Again, I don't know if anybody has an issue with that. Our third comment, at present, 20% of the electricity produced in New York comes from nuclear power. Therefore, nuclear power is an essential part of the state's energy profile. The next item is that nuclear power production presents numerous hazards to public safety and the environment. These include mining and processing, the amount of fresh water that's needed for cooling, radioactive atmospheric and water emissions, possibility of catastrophic failure, and how to deal with waste for thousands of years. Now, we can spend the next 2 weeks getting into the weeds on any one or all of those items. But I'm hoping that we might be able to agree that these are at least issues with nuclear power. The questions that have been asked about it over time. Our next statement is that nuclear power production should continue. The lifespan of existing plants should be extended as long as is practical and safe. However, no new facilities using current technology should be built. And our last statement, research and development should continue in order to develop safer and more efficient methods to produce electricity, both nuclear and from other sources. Rod has a comment.
One comment and one question. If I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken, but if I'm not mistaken, the first commercial nuclear power plant came in about 1958. Okay. So it'd probably be correct that to over 60 years rather than 70.
Yeah.
The second question is, where was I? Oh, however, no new facilities using current technology should be built. What's the allusion to there? I mean, are you saying that we got to wait until fusion is practical, or what? What's the allusion there?
What I was getting at with that statement is that the current nuclear facilities have problems that we discussed in the earlier point. And so we don't want to compound those problems. So if we continue the current technology, keep it going because it's already part of the energy portfolio, but don't make those problems worse by building additional plants. I have faith in the future, and in the future, whether it's nuclear or whether it's fission or possibly fusion, which they keep talking about, or improvements with other technologies, might reduce the need for nuclear.
Okay, well, frankly, I don't necessarily agree with the statement that says numerous hazards to public safety.
Okay.
I just want to point out, the United States has not even come close to having a problem like they had at Chernobyl in the late 80s. Nuclear power in the United States is actually very safe and very controlled, incredibly well controlled. In France, almost all of their electricity is generated via nuclear power plants.
Yes.
So in Germany, they were getting ready to shut them all down. Matter of fact, they had shut them all down. And then along comes the festivities in Ukraine, and they can't get oil and gas from Russia anymore. So now they're cranking them back up. The point I'm trying to make is I don't necessarily agree with that comment. Nuclear power plants, when constructed well and maintained well, as we do in the United States, the biggest issue that you have is dealing with waste, right?
Yes.
You don't necessarily have a big problem with atmospheric radioactivity either. That's not That's not a truism there.
They test for it because they're concerned.
They always test for it anywhere where you have any nuclear
Yeah.
use. I mean, I was dealing with nuclear regulatory commission when I was teaching at the Naval Academy. All right, because we had nuclear in our lab.
Absolutely.
Right, we had isotopes in our lab, so they test for it everywhere. But just the illusion there is that you've got a potential atmospheric problem. Not unless you have a catastrophic failure. You don't have that. And as for the water radioactivity, again, I disagree with that. And I come back to the comment that I said to y'all when our committee met. Power production for a nuclear facility is using countercurrent heat exchanger. Radioactive water never comes in contact with the water that you use to generate electricity. It's countercurrent heat exchanger. So as long as it's maintained properly, the only thing you're going to have to deal with, as Lucas and I were talking about at the beginning, is the reduction of water temperature at the end. And again, that depends on whether you're using superheated or, that is to say, under pressure water, or water that is not under pressure. So you do have to bring down temperature. But that water, while hot, of course it's got to be hot, it's driving a turbine. That water is not radioactive. Okay, the water that's actually used to generate the electricity is not in contact with the core.
Lance, you wanted to?
Yeah, I just wanted to go a couple of technical things. The only radioactive gas that I know of from a nuclear reactor is isotope of nitrogen. And it has something like a 7-second half-life. 20 half-lives is considered the base. If something undergoes 20 half-lives, it's considered totally, safe. So 20 half-lives is 7 seconds, is 140 seconds, basically 2 minutes, and it's coming out of the stack. It's not radioactive anymore, and that's the only one. The nuclear reactors are not all cool. They're cool with water because it's abundant, but they can be cool with liquid sodium. What happened with the nuclear subs? The nuclear subs were going, and there was some residual, very small amount of radioactivity in the wastewater, but they were tracking the subs. So now they use liquid sodium, and as far as I know, that's what I was told. And the liquid sodium doesn't leave a track, and therefore they can't do it. Now, Chernobyl, which you mentioned, was not a nuclear failure scientifically. It was a management. What happens is uranium is hit by a neutron. The uranium breaks up into non-radioactive barium and non-radioactive krypton and 3 neutrons. Those 3 neutrons continue the reaction. Those 3 neutrons can be slowed down with a moderator like graphite. In other words, you have 3 coming out, maybe the graphite will grab 2. Or a control rod like cadmium. They come through, they hit the cadmium, and they're sucked up, and that's the end of it. So you can control the reactor. Those were taken out of the reactor at Chernobyl, and it went to full. Not because of the science was bad or anything. It was a human error. So I wanted to bring up those couple of things. I think it's important to realize on the water that, a couple of people mentioned the water. The only thing that people complain about is that the water comes out warm. But if you go to Oswego, being a fisherman, all the fishermen go to the warm water because the fish all go to the warm water.
That's the point I was making about Calvert Cliffs down in Maryland.
Right. But the third thing is, about 20 years ago, there was a reactor called the Tokamak reactor. And the Tokamak reactor released more energy than it consumed through a fusion reactor. So fusion reactors have been worked on for a long time. I know most of you, like yourself, are probably old enough to remember that there was something called cold fusion. And cold fusion, they went back and they
Scam, of course.
And cold fusion, they found that it did produce a residual power. And they can't understand why, but that it did. So the fusion reaction is not so such to a haphazard as you think. So I'm going back to what you said. I wouldn't necessarily say we're against any new reactors, fusion or fission.
If we ever got to fusion.
As long as, you
If we ever
know,
got to fusion, yeah.
Well, this says that we would look forward to improved technology.
yeah, and I think you guys did a great job. I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure about the key points.
Tiernan Smith had a comment?
Yeah, thanks, John. I just wanted to mention that a few years back, there was an article, and I think there was even a documentary on this, and it was with respect to the latest nuclear energy technologies. And like I said, it's been a couple of years since I had looked into it, but the gist of the story was that there was a new technology at that time that was being worked on by several different scientists. And long story short, that this particular new technology was, I think they're calling it like stage 3 nuclear reaction or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly, but anyway, point being is that the currently used technology only uses about 30 to 40% of the energy that's contained in the fuel rods, and that with this new technology that they're working on, they're able to extract about 90% of the remaining energy from those from the previously spent fuel rods. So essentially the story is that the currently existing supply of, which I think are now buried spent nuclear fuel rods, you'd be able to, with this newest technology, by extracting the remaining 90% of what's left in those fuel rods, you could theoretically provide all the power for essentially the Earth for the next 100 years by this new technology. Just utilizing currently existing spent fuel rods. So I apologize for not remembering the scientist that was working on it or the article that I had read, but it is a real thing. But I'll have to look it up and provide that information. But again, so new technologies are on the horizon, and I think that it's not too terribly far out before we're going to be able to see some incredibly efficient and long-term nuclear facilities. So anyhow, I'll leave it there.
There's a couple of things that Tiernan need to correct. There is no burying of spent fuel rods. They are either stored in water pools or they are in a method which is called dry cast. Once the nuclear radiation in the spent fuel rods in the wet pool have reached a certain level, they are then transferred to the wet or the dry cast method. There is no repository in the United States for high-level nuclear waste.
There is none in the world that I know of. Or
Yeah.
that is
You don't know
going
where
to
the
be
Russians are
safe
doing
for
it.
200,000 years. Yeah.
I have a couple of comments about Herb, yes?
I like it. Just as written, it seems like you and Dakota spent a lot of time. It's very generic, it's kind of apolitical, and has a lot of information. I'm really worried that if we give any indication at all to the Board of Legislators that this might be feasible to build new plants some corporation is going to take advantage of our county again and have more power lines that we don't want. We can talk about the future, about what might be happening, but we don't have it right now. I like what you've written. Well written.
There seems to be some misunderstanding. The 765 line that goes through St. Lawrence County and the Smart Path are not directed to New York City. They all go to Guilderland, to the New York State SIO, and are distributed throughout the state. There is in the process one solely dedicated line coming from Hydro-Quebec, which is going to go under the entire length of Lake Champlain, emerge at the southern end, and there's going to be a dedicated line, I think it's 140 megawatt capacity, directly to the substation in Astoria, Queens. So this whole concept that it's all going to New York City is not true.
Yeah.
Where did we say that? Did we say that?
No, we don't, but Herb was making the comment that power tends to go, get sent, we produce power and it goes to New York City. That's a comment that has been made several times during this discussion. On the item where nuclear power production presents numerous hazards to public safety and the environment, the items that are listed there are all items that were brought up by one or another EMC member during the various discussions that we've had, either the comments that were written or discussions that were had in the committee meeting. And I included them without editing because I wanted to respect the opinions of people. And so in mining and processing, there are statements that were made that, I don't know, tests have shown that people in the communities around where uranium is mined have higher rates of cancer than other places. We can discuss that, we can debate that. All I know is a comment that was made. The amount of fresh water that was needed, it is a lot of water, so nuclear plants have to get built on Lake Ontario or the Hudson River or the St. Lawrence River.
They actually don't have to, John. I mean, a nuclear power plant, per reactor.
Yeah.
Per reactor now, it depends on how many reactors you have, but per reactor, the amount of terrain that you need is about 40 to 50 acres if you're going to have cooling towers. All right. I mean, it's not like it has to be on, some big island somewhere where you're consuming everything.
Right.
You're not. Right. So I mean, but it does depend on how many reactors you're going to run. Now, the question that I had on this thing was started all off with us. What was the context of this question? Now that you showed me this, I got it. All right, I understand the context. Through the course of this conversation, it's come up a couple of times. Is anybody really thinking about this? And the short answer was no. The answer that I heard was no.
Yeah.
So again, I come back to Mr. Akers here. Who brought this up to begin with. I mean, is he buying stock in Con Edison or something? And with the idea of building a power plant. I mean, I don't see an issue with the question except for the context of the question.
If we can stop the recording for an instant, I'm not literally asking you to do that. Let me give you what I understand to be the backstory to this. I understand that Kevin Akers was just being a smartass when he asked the question. He started off by saying, we're talking about the resolution from the Board of Legislators to declare Earth Day. And he says, I've been on the board since 2011. I've seen warm and fuzzy resolutions through all these years, but it's pretty much totally meaningless. Okay. And then he goes on to say, what I'd like to know is the EMC's policy concerning nuclear energy. So I don't think he was coming from anywhere else other than being a smartass. My own opinion, I could be wrong. That being said, a legislator asked the EMC to look into something, and the county administrator has taken his request and has reminded our director on several occasions since then that the Board of Legislators is looking for an answer about the EMC's position. So I could respond to Kevin Akers, smart ass to smart ass, not gonna do that. I still want to keep my job for another year. But this, I think this reflects a serious and well-intentioned effort on our part, on your part, to put together an answer to the question.
Right. I wonder if I can make this suggestion.
Yeah.
For nuclear power production presents, and you have numerous hazards to public safety. Can we change that to nuclear power production presents possible hazards?
Yes.
Sure.
And then.
Potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, potential would be a better word.
Period, and don't mention the other ones. Because you mentioned that there's possible hazards, you don't have to be controversial. It doesn't need the water, it can be cooled with liquid sodium, which takes water out of the equation. So, but, you know, rather than give people like bait, rather than show them.
If it's the will of the group, we will delete everything from that part after the first sentence.
I don't think you're missing the meat. The meat still is, there are possible hazards, you know? And
As staff, we wanted to respect the statements that people had made.
and as I said to the Board of Legislators at their meeting, those people in the planning office do a hell of a job.
I heard that.
I did say
I
that.
heard that. Yes, you did. Thank you.
I have a comment, and I don't know how to raise my hand, or I would have done that. I think that the listing these issues, I think it would make people think. And as far as water goes, it takes a lot of water to mine and process uranium, and it leaves behind a lot of contaminated land that the radioactive dust can be blown around into neighboring areas. They mine it in two ways. Either they dig it out of the ground, or they do an in situ leaching, which is similar to fracking, only they put chemicals down and they pull the uranium out, and it leaves, residual nasty stuff there as well. And then they also process it, which requires more water and more contamination. And a lot of that is done in places where there aren't a lot of people, mostly Indian reservations and places out west. And we and other countries have left, our trash essentially behind. And to continue to do this is only going to create more problems by breaking it up smaller. There is more access. Everybody worries about radon in their cellar. Well, radon is one of the daughters, and radon is emitted into the atmosphere. So there's a lot of nitty gritty that can cause potential problems near where it's mined and, the other things. The fresh water, yes, it's needed for cooling. And yes, you do have to have a pretty good water source for it, where you cannot put it somewhere where, if we go into drought conditions, that there won't be fresh water to cool. The salt cooling ones and the lead cooling ones, they have their own problems. I mean, salt is a really terrible, we just got done listening to a presentation on salt. And eventually these plants have to be decommissioned, and you're going to end up with salt waste, and you're going to end up with a lot of, other waste. The atmospheric and water emissions, they give people living downwind of these plants iodine pills to take in case there is an atmospheric release of tritium in iodine 141. They also have levels that are okay for these plants to release, because they believe that they will be dispersed before it gets to people. And over the years, there have been releases because sometimes pressure builds up and they have to do it. The possibility of catastrophic failure, that is true, but that is not one of my major concerns because the catastrophic failures we've had have been very rare and they are always there, but I would hope that since those have happened, that a lot of things have been fixed. And I know a lot has since 3 Mile Island. And the other thing is, we're talking about humans and human error, and humans are always going to make errors. And I read an article and it was about Diablo Canyon in Northern California, which is on the water, but it's sited in a cove where if there's ever a tsunami, it's going to be totally obliterated, sort of like Fukushima, and they know that. But they have these cooling, they are operating now, and they have these cooling waters, and they have nuclear regulatory people that come every month, and they have to do these significant surveys of the piping because there's lots and lots of piping. And they were found to not have noticed like this big, huge, giant hole that was spewing something like 3,900 gallons of water an hour, a minute. And that was supposed to be cooling. So they had to shut down to repair that. And it was something that should have been seen because it was there for a long time. The other thing with the waste for thousands of years, that is an incredibly big deal because it's 200,000 years. Right now, the waste storage is being paid for by the ratepayers of these particular power plants and the rest of us who have to have a bit of nuclear power mixed in with our electricity. In, 100 years, many of those plants are not going to be running. In 1,000 years, the companies are probably going to be out of business. Who's going to pay to take care of that waste for that amount of time and to guard it and to make sure it doesn't leak? And if you look at the government and other people's track record, look at Hanford in Washington State, where people are sick around Hanford and the barrels are leaking. And it's just, when you think, how can you possibly take care of something for that amount of time and make sure that it doesn't get out? And those are my thoughts. And I mean, I totally agree that it is fairly safe. They are looking into new plants. I did research on new plants, and none of them are actually being built because they're still all in planning, and it's so hard to do. So anyway, that's my thought.
Nicole.
One comment there. There are 2 nuclear reactors currently being built by the Southern Corporation in Georgia.
Yes, but they're not the new kind, as far as I understand.
No, they're standard ones.
Right, yeah, not the new kind, right.
So Nicole had a comment that I saw across the bottom of the screen, not long enough to read it.
The last one?
Did you get it, Dakota?
Yeah, she had said, and changed, quote, no new facilities using current technology should be built, to, quote, assessment of current technology should be evaluated for efficiency.
And John and the rest of the board, I respect I respect that you put the comments in there unedited as people shared them. I'm just trying to be Switzerland. It seems like among the board, we're not going to come to consensus about how everybody feels. So I guess I was just trying to edit or tailor the comments so that everybody could live with it, right? So that we can get concession, I guess, or consensus at least. Because I don't know that we're ever going to make a statement that every single individual is going to completely honor, buy into, and believe wholeheartedly. And like Sue said, I think that that's a good thing, right? It means that we're really, really thinking hard and critically about this issue and looking at both sides of the story and the possibilities. And so I think that that's a perfectly acceptable consensus to come to as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to this. It seems to me we're on an international border. International politics and geological considerations would not be conducive to a nuclear power plant in this area. Messina had the largest earthquake in the 300 years in the northeastern part of the country in 1944. To say we're not going to have another one. I mean, I just think it's a absolutely moot point. There is not going to be a nuclear power plant built anywhere near us in our lifetime.
Yeah, Rick, it's my
It's not gonna happen.
understanding there was a proposal maybe in the 70s. Now, of course, I wasn't here in the 70s, so I can't vouch for it, but there was.
Yeah, the super collider. Remember
Well,
that?
no, there was a proposal for a reactor to be built on the St. Lawrence River. And as I understand it, it was going to be sited somewhere near Leishman Point, White House Point in Waddington. And it never went anywhere. And so I'm not aware that there has been any proposal, even a proposal, even a general proposal since. So I don't think that Kevin Akers or anybody else is looking to, the EMC says it's great, so let's build one tomorrow. I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is, I'm sorry, I think this is kind of a waste of our time. Bluntly, so.
I think we put a pretty fair, decent amount of effort into this, considering the pitch.
Yeah.
I think if we edit our comments a little bit, I think that this is a perfectly fine memorandum to put forward.
Yes, I agree.
And
Agreed.
Yeah.
I wanted
We don't want to listen to this.
respect the request of the Board of Legislators and do what the EMC is supposed to do, provide good advice
Yes.
to the Board of Legislators.
Yeah, I still think that it should be just one sentence, because we saw how much controversy was brought up when we start giving examples of things. For instance, iodine 131, the only known application I know of iodine 131, it's given to track thyroid in the body. It's used in the body because it has a very short half-life, and the radioactivity is very low. But I've never heard of iodine 131 in the
141. 141.
Right.
So, but it doesn't matter. I'm just saying.
It doesn't matter. It's just, no, I agree. I think this is a really nice thing, but I just think that, I think it's fair to put in the hazards, the possible hazards. And I think that if we change it to presents possible hazards or something like that, then that is fine. But I think it ought to be there, because I think most people don't even think about mining and processing the uranium as part of the whole chain from start to finish, from the life of the reactor. We haven't even talked about the cost of nuclear power, which is significantly more than other kinds. And I mean, that's not part of the environmental hazard, as I understand. I'm looking environmentally, so and how long the lead time is, and and all these other things. So I think focusing on the environmental aspect of nuclear power is important for us, and we should be looking from the beginning to the end.
Comment I have to make is, in the statement that you make there, at present time, 20% of the electricity produced in the state is from nuclear power. I think one of the things that has to be differentiated is the difference between peak load and base load. And one of the advantages of nuclear power is it's constant. It's constant. It and hydroelectric form the base load. And right now, we do not have a technology other than these two that can take and maintain the base load 24/7, 365. We do not have a acceptable utility grade storage system for wind and solar at this point. But I think one of the major advantages of the nuclear is that it is constant.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to keep the power plants that we have now. I mean, they are definitely, important to our state.
All right, it's 8:20, and we can be here all night. We can be here. for a
Exactly.
week. What do we want to do tonight? Shall we table this and bring it back next month? Give everybody a chance to look at it?
I have one John, if I could, I just have one thing, a comment that I would like everyone to just kind of think about. We don't have to discuss it at all, but just food for thought. So going to Brian's point where we're talking about currently the nuclear source and the hydroelectric source throughout, the state, wherever, what have you. Those provide essentially the base. They provide the source for the base load, if not more, of the power that we use on a statewide basis. So one thing I think is considerably important and worth thinking about is with respect to the amount of electricity load and demand that we are currently on the verge of seeing as far as increases are about to happen. My statement really goes to the fact that over the next 5 to 7 years, I would venture to say that with the overwhelming introduction of electric vehicles of any sort, whether they be cars, trucks, bicycles, I don't care, whatever it is, lawnmowers, you name it. I think that we're going to see a considerable shift upward in that base load. And I think, I really think that we're at a point where, especially in the Northeast, I mean, we're basically at the breaking point of what our current infrastructure can actually hold. I mean, just look at how often we have brownouts, localized blackouts, etc. throughout the summer. And God forbid we had something like that in the wintertime and we're, nearly solely reliant on electricity. I'm sorry, but we do not have the grid infrastructure to sustain this. I mean, I'm not talking specifically of nuclear. I'm talking about this wave of the future type thing. There needs to be a whole rethinking of just exactly how it is that we're thinking that electricity is going to be the sole power source for, the grid or, our lives in general. And I'm not disagreeing with the idea. All I'm saying is that, when you take these things into consideration, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I mean a lot before we can legitimately start thinking that, a paradigm shift over to an all electric society is really what needs to happen. And I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just thinking, like I said, needs to be a paradigm shift in the way that we think about how electricity is sourced and used and carried from one place to another. So that's my 2 cents. So
The Energy Information Agency published in its latest annual report that the high-end estimate of increase in electric demand by the year 2050 is 1.1%, and the low end is 0.98%. And their discussion includes everything, including EVs and whatever. So,
I mean, how is that possible when we use like 1 billion gallons of gasoline or fuel oil or whatever on a daily basis? I mean, how is it possible? I don't see that. I'm not trying to be, the devil's advocate here. Honest to God, I'm not. I just don't see that as being a realistic number. I mean,
Folks, I think we need to take.
perhaps I'm wrong.
It's almost 8:30. I think we need to table this for tonight. And let's bring it back to committee next month. Each of the committees to get another chance to take a whack at it. We'll bring it back to the EMC and see if we can develop consensus next month. And if at some point we determine that we cannot develop consensus, then that'll be our report to the Board of Legislators.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more comments?
I move we
Alright.
adjourn.
Okay, message to the Board of Legislators.
Just my comment is, I don't think we could beat this a long time. And I don't think we're that far apart. Several people have mentioned if they can change a couple of words, that they'd be fine with it.
Yes.
Nicole shaking her head yes.
All right, so let's think about it and we'll come back.
Straw poll or what minor things that you could change. I think I
There's a
don't
motion,
keep doing
there's
it.
a motion and a second to adjourn. If you have a motion.
I'll second. Do we have a motion? If we've got a motion on the floor, I'll second.
Adjourn. Yes.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Eric.
All in favor?
Hello.
I gotta go.
Hello.
And,
Goodbye.
okay, we're adjourned.
I'll set you.
Bye-bye, everybody. Good
Okay.
discussion.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Go.